Have you ever wondered how a single act of cruelty could come back to haunt someone years later? That's exactly what happened to Alex, a ruthless CEO who thought he could dismiss anyone without consequences. When he fired a pregnant employee without a second thought, he thought he had made the right move. But little did he know, the woman he tossed aside was about to return, armed with a secret that would unravel everything he built. How could one decision from his past turn into the ultimate downfall? Stick around, because by the end, you'll see how karma has a way of catching up to even the coldest hearts. Welcome to a world of untold stories and shocking truths. Some secrets change lives forever, and this one just might. Let's begin. Alex Sinclair had always been a man of logic, business, and cold calculations. As the CEO of Sinclair Enterprises, his decisions were made based on one thing: profit. He had built his empire from the ground up, overcoming obstacles that would have crushed a lesser man. He was a visionary, a leader, and above all, a man who knew how to get things done. For Alex, emotions were distractions, unnecessary complications in the pursuit of success. He prided himself on being a ruthless businessman, someone who understood that the world didn't have time for sentimentality. His employees were no different. They came and went, each one a cog in the vast machine of Sinclair Enterprises. They worked hard, but Alex never allowed personal relationships to cloud his judgment. If someone didn't perform or didn't meet his high standards, they were out. No exceptions. He'd been through it all. Deals that fell apart, betrayals that nearly ruined him. But through it all, he remained unshaken. Nothing would stand in his way. Among the many faces that passed through his company was Emily, a young woman who had joined Sinclair Enterprises fresh out of college. She had quickly proven herself with her work ethic, dedication, and sharp mind. Alex had noticed her early on, seeing potential that many of her colleagues overlooked. In a company where every employee was expected to bring their A game, Emily stood out as someone who wasn't just good, but exceptional. Over the past year, she had worked tirelessly to climb the corporate ladder, proving her worth at every step. She had long been on Alex's radar for promotion, and he had begun to think of her as one of the future leaders of the company. Emily wasn't just another employee. She was someone Alex thought could take Sinclair Enterprises to the next level, and he had plans for her. But everything changed the day she walked into his office with news that would alter the course of their lives forever. "I'm pregnant," Emily said, her voice calm but trembling with uncertainty. She stood in front of Alex's polished mahogany desk, holding her breath as she waited for his reaction. The words hung in the air, but Alex barely looked up from the documents in front of him. He was scanning the latest report, his mind already shifting to his next meeting. But Emily's words broke through his focus like a jarring note in a perfectly composed symphony. He set the paper down slowly, meeting her gaze for the first time. There was something about her eyes, an unspoken vulnerability that Alex had never seen before. Pregnant. The words seemed to echo in his mind, but Alex's thoughts were racing. Emily was talented, yes, but she was also now a liability. Pregnancy meant months of absence, and Sinclair Enterprises couldn't afford to have anyone absent, especially someone with the kind of potential Emily had. Alex's mind began to calculate, running through all the possibilities. He couldn't afford a maternity leave, not when the company was poised for its next big expansion. It would hurt the bottom line, and Alex had never been one to make decisions based on feelings. Business was business. Without a moment's hesitation, Alex made the decision. He wasn't going to allow sentimentality to cloud his judgment. "Emily, I need you to take some time off," Alex said, his tone sharp, detached, almost as if he were discussing a minor adjustment to a schedule. "We can't have you on the payroll right now. It's a business decision." Emily blinked, her face draining of color. It wasn't the response she had expected. In fact, she hadn't expected anything like it at all. She had worked hard, had sacrificed so much for this company, and yet, now she was being told she wasn't valuable enough to stay. Her heart sank as the words settled in, and a rush of emotions flooded her. Betrayal, disbelief, but most of all, anger. "But Alex," she started, her voice trembling. She wanted to argue, to fight back, but the words caught in her throat. She had no ground to stand on. She was pregnant, she was emotional, and Alex was the CEO. He had the power, the authority. "I understand it's difficult, but I need you to understand it's the best decision for the company right now," Alex added, as if offering a final explanation. He turned back to his desk, signaling that the conversation was over. There was no room for negotiation. Emily stood there for a moment, feeling as though the world had shifted beneath her feet. It felt as if everything she had worked for was crumbling. She had been blindsided. She had trusted this man, believed in the future she was building at Sinclair Enterprises, but now she was being cast aside without so much as a second thought. The coldness of his words sank deep into her chest, but she didn't cry. She simply gathered her things, standing tall despite the weight of the hurt she felt. Without a word, she left his office, walking out of Sinclair Enterprises for what she thought would be the last time. But little did Alex know, Emily wasn't just walking out of a job. She was walking away from a future she thought she had secured. And that decision, as cold as it seemed to Alex, was the beginning of a chain of events that would ultimately destroy everything he had built. The months that followed were a whirlwind for Emily. She spent her days nursing the wounds of betrayal, all while navigating the emotional and physical changes that came with pregnancy. She'd never imagined a world where her future could be so uncertain. Her friends, family, and colleagues, those who knew her well, couldn't believe what had happened. They offered support, but nothing could fill the void left by Alex's cold dismissal. As she settled into life outside of Sinclair Enterprises, Emily began to realize something she hadn't before. She had spent so much of her energy trying to climb the corporate ladder, trying to fit into a world that didn't truly value her, that she had neglected herself. Now, with the time and space to reflect, Emily began to understand what truly mattered. Her pregnancy became a symbol of her strength, not just the end of a career she thought she wanted. She began to develop a new sense of purpose, one that went beyond the walls of the office. Emily focused on her health, her baby, and building the life she had always dreamed of, but never had the chance to pursue. The corporate world had made her feel small, but motherhood gave her the power to rebuild from the ground up. Meanwhile, Alex was living in his own world, far removed from the consequences of his actions. Sinclair Enterprises was booming, growing faster than ever, and Alex felt more invincible than ever. He had no time for personal matters. His only concern was expansion. The company was on track to become one of the biggest players in the industry, and Alex had a vision for its future. But as the months passed, Alex started to notice something he hadn't anticipated, a subtle shift in his employees. Morale had begun to decline, and there were whispers in the office about the treatment of certain individuals. Rumors spread about the cold-hearted CEO, the man who fired a pregnant woman for the good of his business. Alex brushed it off at first, thinking nothing of the murmurs. After all, he was the boss, and the company was thriving. What did he need to worry about? But when the company's annual gala came around, Alex's world started to shift in ways he hadn't imagined. The event was always a grand affair, a chance to show off the success of the business. Alex had no intention of inviting Emily. She was gone, and to him, she was nothing more than a memory of a past decision. He hadn't thought about her in months, and frankly, he didn't plan to. Then, one afternoon, as Alex sat at his desk preparing for an important meeting, an envelope arrived on his desk. The sleek black envelope was addressed to him in elegant gold lettering. His name, Alex Sinclair, was written in a sharp, crisp font, and the paper inside was thick and luxurious. He couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as he opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, and on it was a short, simple message. "I have something that will change everything for you. Meet me tomorrow at 3 p.m. in the boardroom. I'll be waiting." The letter was unsigned. Alex's stomach turned. Who would send him something like this? The boldness of the message, the cryptic tone, it didn't sit well with him. His first instinct was to dismiss it, but something about the letter intrigued him. It was as though Emily's presence had somehow re-entered his life again, but this time, she wasn't just looking for revenge. She was looking for something more, something far more dangerous. The next day, Alex arrived at the boardroom at 3 p.m. sharp, his mind racing with possibilities. What was this all about? Was this some sort of prank? Or had Emily found a way to gain leverage over him? His heart raced with anxiety as he pushed open the door. To his surprise, the room was empty. No one was there. He waited for a few moments, but there was no sign of anyone. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning. He was about to leave when the door behind him creaked open, and Emily stepped into the room. Her presence was commanding, and Alex could feel his pulse quicken as she closed the door behind her. Emily was no longer the young woman he had fired. She was someone else entirely, someone with control, power, and a sense of purpose that Alex couldn't deny. "Alex," Emily said, her voice smooth, but carrying an edge. "It's been a long time." Alex stood frozen, unsure of what to say. The tension in the air was thick. He had expected a confrontation, but he hadn't anticipated this kind of power from her. She wasn't here to beg for her old job back. No, she had something else in mind. "I trust you've been well," Emily asked. Though it wasn't a question, it was a statement. Alex swallowed hard. "What do you want, Emily?" Emily smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Oh, I think you already know what I'm here for, Alex. You see, there's something I've been keeping from you, something I think you'll find interesting." Alex's mind raced as Emily's words echoed in the room. There was something she was keeping from him, something important, something that could change everything. But what could it be? She had already made a name for herself, and yet Alex couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't here to gloat. This was something more, something deeper. Emily stepped closer to the table, her gaze fixed on him. Alex was struggling to maintain his composure, but he could feel the tension rising between them. There was no longer any pretense of business as usual. This was personal. "I've done some things in the last few months, Alex," Emily began, her voice calm, almost too calm. "Things that have made me, well, let's just say I've made some connections. People you wouldn't expect." Alex frowned, his mind scrambling to make sense of what she was saying. "What do you mean?" His voice was steady, but the uncertainty was creeping in. Emily had always been more than she appeared, but this was a whole new level of intrigue. "Well, I've been building something," Emily continued, her eyes narrowing as she took a step toward him. "Something bigger than Sinclair Enterprises. And the truth is, it's only a matter of time before it catches up with you." Alex stiffened. He knew Emily had been doing something in the months since she left, but he never imagined it could be this serious. He had assumed she would eventually fade into the background, another forgotten employee who didn't make it. But she hadn't. She was building an empire, and from the way she spoke, she was far ahead of him in the game. "What do you want, Emily?" Alex repeated, his voice now laced with a hint of desperation. He had to know what this was all about. Was she here to destroy him? Was this her revenge? He couldn't tell if she was bluffing or if she truly had something that could bring Sinclair Enterprises to its knees. Emily paused for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled again. This time, it was a slow, deliberate smile that sent a chill down Alex's spine. "I'm not here to destroy you, Alex," she said softly. "I'm here to offer you a choice." "A choice?" Alex asked, skeptical. "What kind of choice?" "Simple," Emily said, crossing her arms. "You can either continue down the path you're on, ignoring the fact that everything you've built could come crashing down at any moment, or you can work with me. We can join forces, and together we can build something far greater than you could ever imagine." Alex stared at her, disbelief written across his face. "You want me to work with you? After everything?" Emily nodded, her gaze steady. "I'm not here to play games, Alex. This isn't about grudges or personal vendettas. This is about power, and I have it now. The question is, do you want to be a part of it?" The offer hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Alex was stunned. How could she, a woman he had once discarded, now stand before him offering him a chance at something even bigger? The audacity of her proposal made his head spin. Was this a test? Was she trying to manipulate him into something? Or was she genuinely offering him an opportunity? For the first time in a long time, Alex felt vulnerable. He had built an empire, but Emily had something now that he didn't. A new kind of power. It wasn't just business acumen, it was influence, connections, and a presence that could bring anything down. "I don't trust you," Alex said, the words coming out more sharply than he intended. But Emily's smile never wavered. "I don't expect you to," she replied coolly. "Trust takes time, and frankly, I'm not asking for your trust. I'm offering you a partnership. You either take it or you don't. But you'll soon realize that the choice isn't as easy as you think." Alex could feel the weight of her words. It wasn't just a simple offer. It was a challenge. She was playing a game, and Alex had just been given a seat at the table. But would he take the bait? Was he willing to risk everything he had built for the chance to join forces with the woman he had once dismissed so easily? "I'll think about it," Alex said, though the words tasted like acid in his mouth. He wasn't ready to commit, not yet. But Emily wasn't done. She wasn't here to leave without leaving her mark. "I'll give you until the end of the week to make up your mind," she said, her tone final. "But don't wait too long, Alex. Opportunities like this don't come around every day." With that, Emily turned and walked out of the room, leaving Alex alone. With the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind, he was trapped. If he joined her, would he be handing over control of everything he had worked for? Or would this partnership be the key to unlocking something even greater than Sinclair Enterprises? As the door clicked shut behind her, Alex was left with one burning question. Was Emily's secret the key to his downfall, or his salvation? The days that followed were filled with tension for Alex. He couldn't concentrate on work. his mind consumed by Emily's offer. It gnawed at him, each passing hour weighing heavier than the last. He had never been one to hesitate, but this was different. Emily had something, some kind of leverage or power that he couldn't yet grasp. And it was clear from their meeting that she wasn't just offering a partnership, she was offering him a lifeline, one that he wasn't sure he could afford to ignore. The clock was ticking, and with each passing moment, Alex found himself more and more consumed by the idea of what Emily had created. She wasn't just a former employee now. She was a force to be reckoned with. The very same woman he had dismissed had built an empire of her own, and now she was offering him a chance to be part of it. But at what cost? Alex knew the decision he made would shape the rest of his life. Joining Emily meant more than just business. It meant a shift in the power dynamic, a complete overhaul of everything he had worked for. He had to ask himself, was he willing to surrender some of his control for the possibility of something greater? He spent hours in his office, pacing back and forth, analyzing every angle, trying to see if there was a catch, if there was something he had missed. But every time he thought he had figured it out, Emily's confident smile and cryptic words haunted him. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was the one who held the cards now. The end of the week was fast approaching, and Alex had no clear answer. He couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that Emily had something up her sleeve, something far bigger than just a business deal. She had made it clear that the stakes were high, but she had yet to reveal the true extent of her power. It was on the fourth day after their meeting that Alex received another letter. This time, it was not in an elegant black envelope, but a simple white one, unassuming and plain. But it was the contents that sent a jolt through his chest. Inside, there was a single piece of paper with a single sentence. I have everything I need to bring Sinclair Enterprises to its knees. I've already begun. No signature, no further explanation. Just those chilling words. The implications were clear. Emily had taken steps without him, and now the choice he had been given no longer seemed so simple. She was already executing her plan, and if he didn't act soon, it might be too late to stop her. Alex's hands trembled as he read the letter. He had known it was only a matter of time before Emily made her move, but he hadn't realized how far she had gone. She had found a way to gain leverage over him, and he now understood just how much power she held. She wasn't playing a game anymore. She was out for blood. In a moment of desperation, Alex called his assistant. "Cancel my meetings for the rest of the day," he said, his voice tense. "I need to handle something." As he left the office and drove to the meeting spot, an upscale restaurant in the city center, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of the end. Emily had made it clear that she wasn't here to play by his rules anymore. The empire he had built was now in jeopardy, and it was all because of one decision. A decision he had made in the heat of the moment, without thinking of the consequences. When Alex arrived at the restaurant, he was escorted to a private room where Emily was already waiting. She looked calm, composed, as if she had all the time in the world. She was no longer the nervous young woman he had fired. She was someone entirely different. "I see you've made your decision," Emily said, her tone cool and confident. There was no question in her voice. She already knew. Alex took a deep breath. He couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. The choice was clear now. He had no other option. "I'll join you," he said, the words heavy on his tongue. Emily's smile was slow, almost satisfied. "I knew you'd come around," she said, her voice laced with a mixture of triumph and amusement. "You'll be glad you did." Alex didn't respond. He couldn't. The deal was done, but the weight of it was almost too much to bear. He had just sold a part of his soul for the chance to save his company. But what he didn't realize was that Emily's plan wasn't about saving Sinclair Enterprises, it was about taking it over, piece by piece. As he sat across from her, the reality of his decision began to sink in. He had no idea what he was walking into. He had no idea that this seemingly simple partnership would lead to his downfall, or how the secret that Emily had been hiding would unravel everything he had built. The days after Alex agreed to Emily's offer felt surreal. He couldn't quite process the magnitude of what he had just done. The deal had been struck, but Alex knew it wasn't going to be as simple as signing papers and moving on. He had entered a world that was as dangerous as it was promising. Emily wasn't just another business partner, she was a force of nature, and now Alex was a part of her machine. Emily wasted no time in pulling him into the fold. He was introduced to her network, a series of influential figures in the business world who had rallied behind her. There were tech moguls, venture capitalists, and entrepreneurs who all saw the potential in Emily's vision. It was an empire she had built from the ground up, and now Alex was one of the key players. But as he began to work alongside her, he started to feel the weight of her influence. Emily had a way of making everyone around her feel like they were part of something bigger, something more important than they had ever imagined. She made Alex feel like he was finally part of the inner circle, but with that came a nagging sense of unease. It was as if she held all the cards and Alex was simply a pawn in her game. He quickly realized that her plan for Sinclair Enterprises wasn't just about collaboration. She wasn't here to help him grow the company. She was here to take control. Slowly, methodically, Emily began to insert herself into every facet of the business. She made strategic decisions, reshuffled leadership roles, and implemented changes that Alex hadn't anticipated. Each move she made left him feeling more and more like a spectator in his own company. It wasn't long before Emily's influence started to show results. Sinclair Enterprises began to grow faster than ever, and the industry took notice. New partnerships were formed, and Alex's name was once again on the lips of business leaders. But as the company soared, Alex's discomfort deepened. It wasn't his vision anymore. It was Emily's. He was no longer the mastermind. He was just a figurehead, a man living in the shadow of someone far more powerful than he could have ever imagined. One afternoon, as Alex sat in his office staring out at the city skyline, he received an unexpected visitor. It was his old assistant, Claire, who had left the company after his decision to fire Emily. She had been with him for years, but after the way things had gone down, Claire had decided to move on. Her sudden appearance now, months later, was unsettling. "Alex," Claire said, stepping into his office. Her tone was guarded, but there was a look of determination in her eyes. "We need to talk." Alex stood up, confused and uneasy. "What's going on, Claire?" She looked around the office, as if making sure they were alone. "I've been hearing things, Alex. Things about Emily. She's been making moves behind your back, and I don't think you fully understand the depth of her plan." Alex's stomach tightened. "What are you talking about?" Claire stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I know you think you're working with her, but you're not. She's playing you, Alex. She's already started to take over Sinclair Enterprises, and soon she'll have complete control. She has people in place, she's buying out shares, and she's manipulating you into thinking this is all your idea. But it's not. It never was." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He had suspected something wasn't right, but hearing it from Claire confirmed his worst fears. Emily had been working behind the scenes, carefully orchestrating her takeover of Sinclair Enterprises, and now, with Alex's help, she was positioned to completely dominate the company. "She's using you, Alex," Claire continued. "She's not here to build something with you. She's here to destroy you." The words hit Alex like a freight train. He had been so blinded by his own desperation to save his company that he hadn't seen the truth. Emily had never wanted a partnership. She had always been playing a much bigger game. And now, it was too late. Alex took a deep breath, trying to process the gravity of the situation. "What can I do?" he asked, his voice strained. "How do I stop her?" Claire shook her head. "I don't know, Alex, but you have to act fast. If she gets full control, it's over. You'll lose everything." For the first time in months, Alex felt a sense of urgency. He had made a mistake, and now he had to fix it. He couldn't let Emily win, not after everything he had worked for. But as he sat there in his office, his mind racing with ideas, he knew one thing for sure. He had underestimated Emily, and now it was going to cost him everything. The next few days were a blur of activity for Alex. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Claire's words echoed in his mind as he tried to strategize a way to stop Emily's takeover of Sinclair Enterprises. He had to move quickly, but the problem was clear. Emily had already put her plan into motion. She had built a network, secured alliances, and gained the trust of key players within the company. She was everywhere, and Alex had no idea where to start. He spent sleepless nights going over every decision he had made, wondering where he went wrong. Had he been too arrogant, too blinded by his own success? Had he failed to see the ambition behind Emily's smile, the quiet determination in her eyes? He had underestimated her, and now it seemed it was too late. The one thing Alex had going for him was his knowledge of the company. He knew Sinclair Enterprises better than anyone, and if he could find a way to turn the tables, he might still have a chance. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that his options were limited. Emily had been clever. She had planted herself in every part of the company, and every move he made felt like it was playing into her hands. Alex knew he couldn't do this alone. He needed help. He called a few trusted colleagues, people who had been with the company for years, people who still believed in the original vision of Sinclair Enterprises. They were loyal, but even as he spoke to them, Alex could feel the uncertainty in their voices. Emily's influence had already taken hold, and it was hard to find anyone who wasn't already aligned with her. As the days passed, Alex began to feel more and more isolated. The weight of his decisions, of his past mistakes, was starting to break him. He had sacrificed everything to save his company, but now he wasn't sure it was even worth saving. The very thing he had built was slipping through his fingers, and all because he had underestimated Emily's ruthlessness. One evening, as he sat alone in his office, staring out at the skyline, there was a knock at the door. He looked up, surprised. Who could it be? It was late, and most of the staff had already gone home. He opened the door to find Emily standing in the doorway, her expression calm, almost serene. She had been there for a few weeks now, constantly hovering around the edges of the business, making her mark. But now, she was standing before him, face to face, her eyes locked on his. "You look troubled, Alex," she said softly, her tone almost mocking. "Everything all right?" Alex said nothing at first. He couldn't speak. The words stuck in his throat. The woman who had once been his employee, the woman he had fired, was now standing here, looking as if she owned the place. And in many ways, she did. "What do you want, Emily?" Alex finally asked, his voice thick with frustration. "I want what's mine," Emily replied, her voice smooth and confident. "And right now, that includes Sinclair Enterprises." Alex's heart sank. He had known this moment was coming, but it didn't make it any easier to face. He had fought so hard to keep his empire intact, but in the end, it was clear that Emily had already won. She had outplayed him, outsmarted him at every turn. And now, it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. "You think you've won," Alex said bitterly, "but this company was built by me, not you. I made it what it is." Emily stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "That's where you're wrong, Alex. You built the foundation, but I built the future, and the future doesn't need you anymore." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the company she was taking. It was everything he had worked for, everything he had sacrificed. And in that moment, Alex realized that he had no more cards to play. Emily had already won. She had taken everything from him without him even realizing it. As Emily turned to leave, she paused at the door, glancing back over her shoulder. "By the way," she said, her voice tinged with amusement, "I hope you've made peace with your decision, because it's too late to go back now." The door clicked shut behind her, and Alex was left alone in his office, his empire crumbling around him. He had lost everything, not just Sinclair Enterprises, but the one thing he had never truly understood: the power of the people who worked with him, the loyalty he had taken for granted. Emily hadn't just taken his company, she had taken his pride, his legacy. But in the quiet of that moment, one thought lingered in Alex's mind. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late for him to turn the tables after all. The weeks after Emily's final visit were a blur for Alex. The walls of his once proud office felt colder, more oppressive. Sinclair Enterprises was no longer his. Every decision, every move, was now in Emily's hands. He had tried to fight back, but the more he resisted, the more he realized how powerless he truly was. Emily had anticipated his every move, outwitting him at every turn. It was clear now that she had been playing the long game, while he had been focused on the present. But Alex wasn't ready to give up. There was still a flicker of defiance in him, a desire to prove that he wasn't finished yet. Emily had taken control, but Alex still had one weapon left: his knowledge of the company and the people who had once believed in him. It was during one late night at the office, as he sat alone, staring at the paperwork that now reflected Emily's control, that Alex had an epiphany. He had been playing on the defensive for too long. It was time to think like Emily. It was time to play the game on her terms. The next morning, Alex called in a meeting with his most trusted allies, those few people who had stayed loyal to him despite Emily's rise. Together, they began to form a plan, one that would take Emily by surprise. They knew the company inside and out, and they knew how to exploit its weaknesses. For the first time in months, Alex felt a glimmer of hope. He had learned from his mistakes. He had underestimated Emily, but now he would use the very things she had built to bring her down. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but Alex was prepared to fight for what was his. Days turned into weeks as Alex and his team worked in secrecy. They sabotaged Emily's alliances, planted seeds of doubt among her supporters, and began to slowly chip away at the empire she had built. The once unshakable foundation of Sinclair Enterprises started to tremble under the weight of the quiet rebellion taking place behind closed doors. Then, one fateful morning, Emily received a letter that would change everything. It was the same sleek black envelope that Alex had received months ago, and inside there was a single sentence. "The game isn't over, Emily. You may have won the battle, but the war is far from finished." It was signed with just one name, Alex Sinclair. Emily read the letter over and over, a sense of unease creeping over her. Alex had been quiet for too long, and now it seemed he was ready to make his move. She had underestimated him, just as he had once underestimated her. But Emily wasn't worried. She had already won. She had already taken control of the company, and no letter, no threat could change that. But as the weeks passed, Emily began to notice cracks in her empire. Employees who once swore loyalty to her started to question her decisions. Deals that seemed secure began to unravel. Her influence, once so powerful, was starting to wane. She had grown overconfident, and now she was facing the consequences of underestimating Alex. It wasn't long before the news broke. Sinclair Enterprises, once the unstoppable juggernaut that Emily had crafted, was teetering on the edge of collapse. Alex's plan had worked. Slowly but surely, he had regained control, piece by piece. And just like that, Emily found herself on the outside, looking in. Alex stood at the helm once more, his company restored, his power reclaimed. But he had learned a valuable lesson. The price of power was steep, and the game was never truly over. Emily had taught him that, and he would never forget it. As he sat in his office, watching the city lights flicker outside, Alex knew that this was just the beginning. The future was uncertain, but one thing was for sure. He would never again allow himself to be outplayed. And as for Emily, she had disappeared as quickly as she had arrived, leaving behind a trail of destruction. But Alex knew that one day their paths would cross again. And when they did, he would be ready. Some truths change everything, and some mysteries are never meant to be solved. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next one might be even more shocking. Until then, stay curious and stay prepared for the unexpected.